All right, good morning. Well, I've just finished my workout and my brain is awake, and so it's a really good time to work on my homiletics. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my full screen, and I've already brought up my passage that I'm reading today. I'm reading John chapter 11, and then over here on the right, I've got kind of the outline that I use to do my homiletics. So I start with the content list, and and it's not necessarily going to be 1 through 2. This is just kind of my outline. Okay, so over here on the left, I'm going to start by looking. I'm doing the entire chapter of John chapter 11. So I'm going to scroll down to the end of the chapter and see that it's got 57 verses. So I'm going to round off to 60, and just so happens 60 verses divided by 15 content list items makes about 4 verses per content list item. So I'm going to just start by reading this passage, whether I have it read aloud to me, I read it myself, or I could have it read to me and read it at the same time, which sometimes I do. So go ahead and pause your video and read John chapter 11. Okay, so we read our passage, and I'm looking at this, and this is such a great passage. I love this. Um, so I'm looking at this first section here as the way it's delineated in my Bible, and I see that there are 16 verses. So I know for this section, I probably want to have about 4 items. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here, and I'm actually going to start with 3 just because of the way this is organized. I could push it and do 4. So Lazarus is sick, and Lazarus is from Bethany, and it mentions that Mary was the one that poured the perfume, which we had read about. And and the sister sent word to Jesus. So I'm going to say perfume pouring Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that Lazarus was sick. Now I know Lazarus is their brother, but if you don't know that he's their brother, that maybe you'd want to say brother Lazarus was sick. Then I'm going to go to 2, and I'm going to do 4 through 7. When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death." So Jesus said Laz wouldn't die. God glorified. I'm going to change it to Jesus said he and God would be glorified through Laz not dying. Jesus said that he and God would be glorified through Laz not dying. Go back. Okay. Jesus going back. Okay. So now I'm going to try to do 8 through, let's try to do 8 through 11. Let's see how that goes. It's just dialogue, and it's really, we're trying to summarize the story. So not that these words aren't as important as some others. So I think we can make them all fit here. I almost always talk about what Jesus said rather than what the others said. Jesus said, light 12 hours. And At this point, you're not trying to interpret what Jesus is saying, you're just trying to get the facts down. Jesus said 12 hours day, light. I'm going to use both day and light there. Won't stumble. Planning to wake Laz from sleep. And actually, I'm going to make it clear that Jesus said all this by just putting that colon there. Jesus said 12 hours daylight, won't stumble, planning to wake Laz. And I'm going to get rid of from sleep. And I do notice here as I'm reading this, he's saying our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but he's really died. And anyway, I'm just noting that, even though I'm just putting down the facts right now. Okay, so now I'm going to go on and I'm going to try to do 12 because this is my fourth content list item. So I'm going to try to do 12 through 16. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death. So then they told him plainly, he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And so I think the important words here is that he's telling them Lazarus is dead and that this is going to help them believe, which again, that's really confusing. I would be confused just like the disciples were. Okay, so I'm going to say Jesus, Laz, dead, happened. Let's see. I'm going to just say happened. So believe. And that's all I'm going to put there. Well, I guess I could mention Thomas. And Thomas is also the same Thomas that was doubting Thomas later. Didymus, the twin. I'm actually not going to mention Thomas here because the whole reason we're narrowing this down, this content list, if my brain was smarter, I wouldn't have to bother making a content list because the reason we make a content list is to get to the division sentences. And then the reason we make the division sentences is to get to the subject sentence, which is kind of the main sentence about the passage. So, so I know that I'm not going to mention Thomas in the division sentences, so I'm just not going to mention him here. But you definitely could. And sometimes when you go back, you're like, was Thomas in this? Like, let's say we're doing a character study on Thomas and we want to see his faith journey, something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to put it here. All right. Now, the hint I have here, I could be looking at the notes, I could be looking at my lesson, but there's a natural break here because of the headings, the titles. And so I'm pretty sure this is going to end up being my first, actually, it's not going to end up being my first division of my lecture, but it's a natural break. And so to remind myself of that, what I do when I'm writing, and it, of course you can always change it, but I'm going to make this a division. And so then I'm going to go 5 is going to be, or this next division will probably be 17 through 37. And ooh, how many is that? That's roughly 20 verses. And so 20 verses divided by, or 20 verses, I know that there's 4 verses in each content list item. 4 into 20 is 5. So I'm probably going to have about 5 content list items from this section. So 17 through 20 is a nice easy 4. So I'm going to say 17 through 20. And on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Just to point out, well, okay, that's pretty gross. Okay, now Bethany, the city of Bethany, and that's where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lived, It was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. So they lived very close to Jerusalem. And many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them and at the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Okay, so Laz dead 4 days. Martha. And I remember from reading the passage that Mary says the same thing later. Um, I'm kind of putting words in Martha's mouth here, but that's kind of the gist of that. And Martha says, "You should have been here, but God is faithful. He'll do whatever you ask." Maybe I should be more specific about the facts of that. But God will give anything Jesus asks. I usually like to keep it on one line, so I don't really like that, but there it is. And we can always come back. So I ended up doing 22. Well, I guess that's why it's too long because I put too much in there, but I think it's all one thought in my head. Okay, so now 23 through, I don't have to do a whole bunch of verses, but I'm going to do 23 through 26. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, okay, so Jesus said, Laz will rise. Martha confused about last day versus present. Um, you know what? And I'm going to stop there because that's the end of a thought for this. So then I'm going to go 25 through 20. Well, we'll do 26 for now. To me, this is pretty darn important. Jesus is resurrection and life. I need to do both words, but believers will live. I'm tempted to put 27 in there, but I just think these are really good words. In fact, I'm going to underline this so that when I come back and I'm writing my lecture or doing my lesson, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, this is really important that Jesus is saying he is the resurrection and the life. I mean, that is the core of our beliefs as Christians. So I'm going to underline that. That's not really part of homiletics. It's just for me, my own little notes, because this is all for us. Doing homiletics is for the benefit of our own selves as we are carried along by the Holy Spirit. Okay, so now 27. Ooh, see, look at this. I'm just not following rules at all here. Okay, so I'm just going to do 27 on its own. Um, yes. Oh, it's 8:15. Yeah, we gotta go. Okay, please hold. I gotta take Kelly to school. All right. So where were we? Okay, so we were on chapter 11, verses 25 and 26, and I've been doing too few verses, but I am not worried. Are you worried? It always works out. Okay, so Jesus is talking to Martha, and he's saying, "I'm the resurrection and the life." And he asks, "Do you believe this?" Which I didn't put over here, but I'm not gonna. I have a tendency not to go back just because the whole point is to kind of get in your head what's happening. And so yeah, he says, "Do you believe this?" Maybe I will put 27. Okay, sorry. I am gonna put 27. And then Martha believes this is true. Um, or maybe believes, sorry, not just the word this, that's kind of vague. Believes Messiah. Uh, all right, so there we got it. Much better. Okay, 28 through 31 is one paragraph. So I'm going to put those together. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary. The teacher is here and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. I don't know why he was still there, right? She had time to go all the way back home and Mary came. Martha had time to go home and Mary came back out. That's interesting. What was Jesus doing? When the Jew, and I do, as I read this, I do ask all these questions, but the content list is just the facts. So I'm just going to write facts, not I wonder what Jesus was doing. Okay, when that, or if I am, do I have questions like that? I might put that below or put that on the side just because I want to maybe investigate something. Hi, good morning. Do you need your laptop? Oh yeah, I moved the chair over. So, okay, so we're on verse 31. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn. So why are the Jews mentioned here? I think just showing that they were watching these believers in Jesus. Okay, but what do I want to put for my content list item that I'd like to fit on one line? Um, Mary, or maybe I'll even have the Jew. Okay, Jews saw Mary quickly leave. Um, Assumed going to tomb, but going to Jesus. 32 through what's 4 would be all the way. Oh, and yeah, okay. So we get to Jesus wept. 32, 33. Ooh. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do them all. Okay. So, because Jesus wept is the shortest verse in the Bible, especially in the versions of the Bible that say he wept, and little trivia. And but it's also really important. Why did Jesus cry? So I'm going to definitely want to highlight that. So I'm just going to do 32, 33 for now. And and let's see how that works. Okay. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, she said the same sentence as Mary or Martha. Mary, same, that's Martha. Um, but she doesn't ask a follow-up question. So that's fine. Okay, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Jesus saw Jews and Mary weeping. moved. I only got to 33. Oh, that was all I was gonna do. Oh, well, good. I meant to actually put 34. So I'm actually splitting up just because that's all it fit. Okay. And so um hmm, I think it's just gonna be 34 to 36. So Jesus asks, where is Lazarus? He wept. Yeah, I probably should have put, I'm going to have 35 on its own, which isn't very important. I probably should have summarized it with the verses above. Some Jews, why didn't he save Lazarus? Okay, and that's going to be the end of my next division. And we're okay. We're at 11 content list items, and we just have these verses left, so we're doing pretty well. Okay, so Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. I'm gonna go 38 to 40. I'm gonna say emotional Jesus. And it's okay. You've got to stick to the facts, but it's okay. Instead of saying deeply moved, you can say emotional if you think that word is the same. There might be an argument whether that's really the same um, concept, but that's what I'm going to go with. Directed tomb to be opened despite Martha's protest of bad odor. You know what? I'm not going to talk about the bad odor. I can remember that. And we already said 4 days, which implies a bad odor. Emotional Jesus, directed tomb opened to see glory of God. 41 through 44. So they took away the stone. Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. So Jesus prayed out loud. I'm going to say, Jesus prayed. Jesus thanked Father for benefit of crowd. Laz came out when prompted. And I know and remember that the dead man came out with his feet wrapped, and basically he looked like a mummy. And I already have that visual in my head, but if verse 44 kind of strikes you, you might want to mention the fact that he had strips of linen and cloth around his face, because that is a really great visual. um, and actually, Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." That's just not that interesting to me, so I'm just gonna say 41 through 45. Jesus thanked Father for the benefit of the crowd. Lazarus came out when prompted. Um, Actually, Jesus thanked Father verbally or out loud, or I'm going to say out loud. Jesus thanked Father out loud for benefit of the crowd. Lazarus came out when prompted. All right, that's good enough for me. And, you know, I really think this all goes together. even though it's long, and then I'm going to do that. And you don't have to figure out your divisions. I just kind of along the way, I often am thinking ahead to my divisions and how I'm going to divide things. And this just helps me to put a space, um, organize my thoughts. Okay, but this is definitely a new thing, because now we're onto a new thing. Lazarus is now raised from the dead, um, and we've got the many Jews came to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did and believed in him. So many Jews believed, but Sanhedrin summoned, or meeting called, Sanhedrin meeting. Okay, so that was, oh, I didn't do my, that was 40, oh, sorry, that was, look at me. I didn't notice that wasn't a new, okay, so I agree, this is part of 44. And then 45 to 47, what are they accomplishing? Right, 47 for now. Oh, 47 goes on. It's confusing me. Okay, so we'll do 45 to 48. Let's see if we can do that. What are we accomplishing? Here's a man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, which is huge. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. Concerned. You know what? I'm going to make it a new thought. So not 48, 47, 48. Yeah, see, look at how I just like this sentence, 48. If status quo continues at this rate, all will believe. So, and I'm going to say, sorry, concerned at this rate. Well, no, just concerned. All will believe in Jesus. I guess that's pretty obvious. And Romans will take temple, nation, their livelihood. Moving on. Okay, 49. Let's go 49 to 53. Oopsie. To 53. Then Caiaphas. That name's important. Ew. Can't spell his name. And I remember that Caiaphas is high priest, but if that detail is important, you might want to put high priest or high priest Caiaphas. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You did not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than a whole nation perish. Nation perish. Already prophesied. I'm just trying to fit it on one line. Oopsie. Okay. Yeah. Okay. He said he'd prophesied that year not only for that nation but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together to make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. All right. So I'm just going to do this. 52, 53 through 54. From that day on, they plotted to take his life. Kill Jesus. Jesus withdrew from public in Ephraim. with disciples. We got room. Okay. And then last but not least, 55 through 57. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country of Jerusalem for the ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. And we know from our experience that it's getting close to the time that Jesus is going to be crucified. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so they might arrest him. And so basically, there really isn't much to say here. Searching to arrest Jesus. Say almost Passover. Searching to arrest Jesus. Okay, so it's not perfect, but I've taken a passage that's this long and summarized it for it to be this long. So we've shrunk this down. Our content list is shorter than our passage. So we've made some progress here, and I did end up making 3 sections as I was going, and those will be my 3 divisions. I can have 2, 3, or 4 division sentences, and content list doesn't need to be complete sentences, but division sentences are in fact full sentences. So I like the divisions that I've made here as I was going along. And I didn't used to do that, but I just find I see natural breaks as I'm going along, so might as well give myself a visual clue. So I can go ahead and say John 11, 1 through 16 is going to be my first division sentence. And then I know John 11, 17 through 44 is my second one. And then John 11, 45 through 57. And the divisions are usually when the scene changes, when they're moving to a new place, they go to a new place, new topic, new idea. So now I'm going to use this content list. I'm not going to go back to my Bible at this point. I'm going to use my content list. Oh, and actually, this might help for I'm gonna make this big for ease of visual. That's a little too big. Okay. So, um, so I'm just looking at my content list now. I might go back and look at my Bible to clarify, but I'm going to take, this is the reason we make the content list, is so that we can come up with 2, 3, or 4 divisions. And so it's just helping us to think and shrink. So perfume pouring, Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that Lazarus was sick. So through Lazarus not dying, going back, planning to wake Laz, but Jesus says he's actually dead. Okay, so my sentence will be Jesus allowed Lazarus, and I'm going to say his full name because we're not doing summary or short, quick words, we're doing full sentences. Jesus allowed Lazarus to die so that many would believe. That's what I'm going to say. And the next sentence, Lazarus was dead 4 days. Martha said, "You should have been here," but she's faithful that God will give him anything. Like, I think she's still hopeful that Jesus is going to do something. I think she does have faith. Jesus said Lazarus will rise. She's confused about what he's saying. And then this I had underlined, Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Believers will live. Jesus is the resurrection and the life, and raised Lazarus from the dead. I'm thinking that I want to say something about Jesus weeping because he had a lot of emotion in this passage, and I think it would be good. So maybe what I want to say is sympathetic Jesus. Raised Lazarus from the dead. I feel like this is a really important, this middle passage is kind of the meat of the passage. Sympathetic Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead so that people would see the glory, or I could just say, see God's glory and believe. And I can't spell the word. The next section is kind of a whole new thought. And so if I were to do two divisions, I would probably do 1 through 44 and still keep 45 through 57 separate because it's just so different. It's like change of scene, change of people. And so anyway, just if you were doing two divisions, I was just thinking about if I were doing two divisions, I would probably do it that way. And then if I was doing four divisions, I'd probably divide that middle one because I spent a long time making that sentence, which tells me I maybe could have divided it into two sentences. Okay. So many Jews believed, but Sanhedrin meeting called. So I'm going to say Sanhedrin plotted to kill Jesus. I could add concerned about the future of their nation of Israel. The Sanhedrin plotted to kill Jesus. I think I'm going to do that. Okay. Subject sentence. Now, subject sentence is the one sentence summary of this whole passage. So we've gone from the whole big passage to our content list to the division sentences. And so I'm just going to look at the division sentences to get to my subject sentence. So I'm going to look at these three sentences. So Jesus allowed Lazarus to die so that many would believe. Sympathetic Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead so that people would see God's glory and believe. And Mary and Martha were in a lot of the description above, but they're still implied here at the more and more we learn our Bible because we know Lazarus was the brother of Mary and Martha. So they're still implied here. I don't know. I always think about the women as I'm going through these. Sympathetic Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead so that people would see God's glory and believe. Concerned about the future of their nation of Israel. Okay, so my one subject sentence, Jesus raised, and subject sentence is supposed to be 10 words or less. I always am more words and then I try to narrow it down. Jesus raised Lazarus. Do I need to say, okay, I'm going to say from the dead right now. um, Okay, I'm gonna write the whole thing out. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. How about Jesus revealed God's glory when he raised Lazarus, but Sanhedrin plotted to kill Jesus. Okay, so how many words is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Not too bad. Okay, but we want to get down to 10 words. And so I really like the God's glory part, but I might need to let that go. Jesus revealed God's glory. Okay, but the main thing, when we come back to this passage later on, we want to know it's got to have the word Lazarus and it's got to have Sanhedrin plotting to kill Jesus. So Jesus raised Lazarus, but the maybe I'll go Caiaphas. Let me think, because I need to say the Sanhedrin because it's a complete sentence, but Caiaphas I don't have to. But that's okay. We're down to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So actually, we're good to go there. Actually, that's about the fastest I've ever done the subject sentence. It's the pressure of you all watching me. I guess I don't need to say Jesus, Jesus. Ooh. Jesus raised Lazarus, but the Sanhedrin plotted to kill him. I honestly like that. I think that's great. Okay. So now this has all been facts. Everything we've been doing up until now has been writing down the facts of the passage. But what are we learning from this? And I almost always, the Old Testament, I didn't do this quite as much, but it, it, I'm always going to mention either God or Jesus in my, almost always in my subject sentence and almost always in my aim, because the entire Bible is about God. And so he's going to be mentioned almost always. I'm trying to think of a time when I didn't use some form of the Trinity in my subject sentence and my aim. When we do our aim, it is true throughout the whole Bible. We're not just again summarizing. We're not summarizing again what happened in this passage. We want to spiritualize this for the whole Bible. And so, for example, we might say Jesus. We're not going to say Jesus raises Lazarus. We're not even going to mention Lazarus because it's true throughout the whole Bible, and Lazarus is only a small piece of the Bible story. So I'm going to say Jesus has the power to raise people from, has the power to resurrect people from the dead. So I'm spiritualizing here because all we've read about is that Lazarus was sick, Lazarus died, the Sanhedrin plotted to kill him. But what I'm trying to say is that because I see this in the Bible, and also because I know the rest of Jesus's story and I know God's story throughout the whole Bible, I know that Jesus has the power to resurrect people from the dead. And I put the word people, which is fine. Okay, moving on. Because this whole thing, we want to do it in an hour. We can always come back and change it. So um, never fear. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. So now I love this part, application questions. And I always have to remind myself this isn't trivia. This isn't just trying to ask yes or no questions. This is trying, and it's not behavior modification. We are trying to get at the heart and help people to really see Jesus. And and usually my sentences start with what or how. Who, what, why, where, when, and how, and who and why. There used to be a song, I think, like Mickey Mouse Club used to sing. Okay. So I just always have this at the end. I don't know why I don't. I probably should have things by all the other things, by all the other homiletics parts. But okay. So to do my application questions, I go back to the three division sentences and I try to come up with a question for each division. So let's read this division sentence. Jesus allowed Lazarus to die so that many would believe. So a question I might ask is, and as I'm reading that, I am also thinking about up above about Mary and Martha, how Mary was the emotional one, Martha was the doer. I am keeping that in my head as I ask the question because Mary and Martha both transformed through their relationship with Jesus, and obviously Lazarus too. Uh, okay, so I am considering that in my head, but I'm not necessarily going back. In this case, I would have, and I did go back and look at that just because that's what I did. What prompts you to believe even when all hope seems lost? Or maybe the fact that Jesus took Jesus didn't come and save Lazarus before he died. He could have, both Mary and Martha said, "Why weren't you here, Lord? If you had been here, Jesus wouldn't have died." And so I might ask a question, and it's fine to put a bonus question. Um, when, uh, how is your faith? Um, how do you still keep faith when God doesn't immediately answer your prayer? And yeah, so and actually those go together. What prompts you to believe when all hope seems lost? How do you still keep faith when God doesn't immediately answer your prayer? So that's, yeah. Okay, so then the second one, and you don't have to use how. I remind myself to use these question words so that I remember to put a question mark at the end. Okay, so division two, sympathetic Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead so that people would see God's glory and believe. And I am thinking about the emotion that Jesus had and God's glory. And you know what I would just see, how have you seen God's glory through your walk with Jesus? Um, Three, concerned about the future of the nation of Israel, the Sanhedrin plotted to kill Jesus. We're trying to bring it into present day. And so we have, living in the United States, it's not like it is in other countries, but we do have people that um, would say mean things or make us feel bad. They're not trying to kill us here in the United States. We really are so blessed to have freedom of religion, but but we are wimpy Americans, and so I might say something like, when people oppose us, how, and actually I'm going to go down here and try to phrase it in a way. Uh, what stops me from sharing my faith when others oppose my beliefs? And I didn't even mean, we were talking about this in leaders meeting on Monday, I use the word you here, but then I use the word me. And this is for you, but the thing that is so cool is that you can now take these application questions. You can sit down with someone you love, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old, and read the passage and then ask these questions. What prompts you to believe even when you've been through this terrible time, the tragedy of someone dying and the tragedy of a divorce, the whatever it is that just makes you feel like everything. Boy, I'm getting emotional. Okay, so there we go. I just think it's really powerful when we are able to take any passage from the Bible and apply it to our lives and then share that with others. All right. So that's the end. Ta-da! We've got it. And now I've read the passage, I've thought about the passage, I've asked the Holy Spirit to give me insight into this passage. And now I personally go and start my lesson now, but you may choose to um, do your lesson first and then do this, which it's probably going to be easier to do your homiletics because you've already thought about it, you've read the passage. Whichever way you do it, God is going to bless it. So have a great day.